All right, everybody. So, what we're looking at today is picking up from yesterday, talking about the election of 1876. So, I mentioned yesterday briefly that the election of 1876 was going on at the same time that the fair was, and that the two candidates actually make an appearance at the fair. So, um, let's look at these two guys briefly. So, this is Republican candidate Rutherford B. Hayes, Rutherford Bertrand Hayes, governor of Ohio, former Civil War veteran, general, um, all around really upstanding guy. And down here is Samuel, I look like a sleepy turtle, Tilden. Now, as far as Hayes goes, I'd just like to point out Hayes looks like Captain Obvious. It's a little creepy, but there you go. So, both political parties in 1876 kind of came to the same conclusion here. And that is that they needed to change things. Reconstruction had to end. How? Not really quite sure, but one thing was pretty certain: it can't be Ulysses S. Grant doing it. Both parties realize and admit, even the Republicans, that Grant's administration is horribly riddled with corruption. One of his cabinet members was removed for bribery. Most of his cabinet members were involved in shady business dealings of some kind or another. Um, all of to which Grant was painfully oblivious to, seemingly. Um, America had experienced two economic panics in the space of 8 years of Grant's administration, one of which was almost single handedly brought on by Grant by himself. It's really unusual, especially given the fact that, we have our modern view of politics is that the two parties are very different. In 90% of the positions, both of these guys stand for the exact same things. There's some slight differences on things like civil rights and issues like tariffs and expansion, but really they're pretty much the same kind of guy. And both of them actually show up at the fair and give speeches on the days that their states are highlighted. So on Ohio Day, Hayes shows up and gives a speech. On New York Day, Tilden shows up and gives a speech. So Rutherford B. Hayes, governor of Ohio, former U.S. senator from Ohio. Hayes was a compromise candidate. Now, what that means is that you basically have two groups of Republicans. You got one group, a minority, but a significant minority nonetheless, that once again wants to renominate Ulysses S. Grant. Yes, they know his administration is corrupt. Yes, they realize that Reconstruction's got to end somehow or another, but Grant is giving them the power. Keep Grant going. Part of the group, which is the bigger part of the party, realizes that Grant is the problem. Grant himself is a great guy. They love him to death. Honest as the day is long, would go out of his way to help you if he could, but his political savvy, not so much. Why Hayes? Well, the first thing to notice is that Hayes is from Ohio. He is going to be one of a series of presidents from Ohio. That's largely because the Republican Party was controlled by an Ohio businessman. Um, he is a compromise. That's sort of a both sides come to an agreement with him because, quite frankly, nobody knows who the heck he is, and therefore he doesn't really offend anybody. The Grant people are happy because they have a Civil War veteran general to run. The non Grant people are happy because he ain't Grant. And unlike Grant, Hayes has political experience, and his political experience has shown some great successes in his home state of Ohio. The Republican platform for campaign is very straightforward. The Democrats caused the war, therefore you can't trust them because they'll make everything worse. Why will they make it worse? Because they caused the war. And therefore, you can't trust them because if they caused a war, they'll make everything worse. And how do you know? Because they caused a war. Are you noticing a pattern here? Now, on the flip side, you've got Samuel Tilden, governor of New York, who is also a reformer. The word reformer just means somebody who is going to fix the problems. They are going to reform what's going on. Tilden was well known. New York is the biggest state in the country, New York City, the biggest city in the country. Tilden had made his name, his political fortunes, based on going after and breaking up the most corrupt local government in the country at that time. That was the government of the city of New York. He actually like arrested the mayor of New York and threw a bunch of New York aldermen in prison because of corruption. People knew that Tilden was serious. Tilden is going to reform the government, and what the Democrats campaign on is we are going to fix the government. We're going to fix the problem that the Grant administration and the Republicans caused. And by the way, there's too many Asians in America. We're going to stop that. The tariffs, we don't like those either. And there's too much land being given to the railroad. We're going to fix that too. So this is where the two parties more or less are in their candidates. Um, Captain Obvious again. So the campaign itself, both men support the need for reform. They both understand that. Rutherford B. Hayes is a Republican, but he's not a stupid Republican, nor is he blind to the damage that Grant did. Grant, also, by the way, originally from Ohio. Um, Tilden had gotten a reputation battling the New York City boss and his corruption. Sort of like if you know anything about like Marvel Comics, especially like the good old days of Marvel Comics, he fought a dude named the Boss Tweed. It's kind of like the Kingpin of New York. If you don't know who Wilton Fisk the Kingpin is, look up the Kingpin. Hayes had actually pushed through the 15th Amendment in Ohio and worked really hard for racial equality. Now, I just want you to think about this for a second. Ohio didn't want to adopt the 15th Amendment. It's Ohio. We're not talking about like Alabama here, okay? It's Ohio. They're north of the Mason Dixon line. They fought for the Union, and yet they really don't like the 15th Amendment. Hayes got that through. He was a strong supporter of equality and worked really hard for it. Both of the men were of men of impeccable character. Now, one thing that they both have in common, however, is the issue of money. Both of them believe in the gold standard. That is the idea that America's money, America's entire economy, is based on gold. A growing movement in both the Democratic and Republican parties, but specifically the Democrats, is the idea of beginning to use silver to back money, not just gold. So having silver to support the economy. Why? Well, because number one, silver is a lot easier to get a hold of than gold. And there's a lot more of it than there is gold. Now, the problem with this is that the more money you start putting into stuff, the more you cause inflation. And introducing silver into the economy along with gold would cause the economy prices to go up. That is inflation. And that is precisely why it is that a brand new third party appears. This third party has a weird name. They are called the Greenbacks. So, what are the Greenbacks? Well, aside from being the main like bad guy in an old 80s cartoon show from England called Danger Mouse, Greenbacks were paper money issued during the Civil War by the Union. They had no real value, but the government forced people to use them. This caused inflation, but it also resulted in people spending more money and the government making more money through the inflation. Because when you had to spend more, it resulted in more money being in circulation, which meant that more people were ending up paying taxes. And more taxes came in, therefore more money for the government. Now the problem was is that when the war was over, the government didn't remove the greenbacks. They kept them. And so by 1870, we're talking 10 years after the war is over, 1876, there are millions of dollars in this basically worthless paper money floating around. This becomes the cause of the Greenback Party. They want to make all of those greenbacks, that fake paper money, real paper money by getting silver into the economy, not just gold. Their candidate, and I apologize for what I'm going to show you because you can never unsee it, is American inventor and entrepreneur Peter Cooper. Now, notice, first of all, look at the epic, like, beard on this guy. It looks like he has a fake beard on, seriously. He's got no mustache, but he's got what looks like a hawk's nest on his face. Secondly, check out these funky spectacles, man. They're octagonal and they have side lenses as well as the front lenses. That's weird. This guy like a chameleon where you can see out of the side of his face. Reptoid conspiracy. Okay. Party makes the argument that silver in the economy will actually make it better for everybody. This becomes a real big issue because it involves people paying off bills. And we'll talk about this in the next unit when we talk about business and labor. The strategies of the two parties are really straightforward. The Republicans do something called waving the bloody shirt. It literally was a shirt stained with blood. A fight broke out at a campaign speech, and some dude got the snot kicked out of him, and he bled all over his shirt. They literally ripped the shirt off of his body and began waving it around on a stick, proclaiming that this shirt was stained with the blood of all the men who had died in the war fighting for the Union. And it was the Democrats who caused this shirt to be bloody. They killed these people. They caused the blood. Do you want the bloody shirt to come back? And people are like, no, no, no more bloody shirt. Put the bloody shirt away. Well, this was so successful, they began bringing it around the country. Every campaign stop, they would pull out this gross, nasty shirt. They didn't just do this once. By the way, they do it for like 4 straight elections. So you get like a nasty, like 15-year-old stained shirt floating around with people waving it around. The Democrats simply point out how corrupt the government is, and the Republicans are running the government. Therefore, I'm not saying the Republicans are corrupt, but I'm just saying, follow the logic here. And they're going to continue to divide the nation. Now, in order to make sure that their point is carried home more, the Ku Klux Klan is there as the domestic terrorist army of the Democratic Party to keep blacks from voting in the South and to make sure that the South votes Democrat. This phenomenon, by the way, of the South voting Democrat is called the Solid South. We'll go over that a little bit later. Okay, that's it for today. Peace and love.